right, fantastic. I think we might have it sorted out. Happy Tuesday, happy June 4th. My name is Daniel. I'm with VantagePoint. And if you are in our live today on YouTube, just give me a quick comment. Hop over to the comments box and just chat for me really quickly. I'm going to say hi, we're live, just to make sure everything is working from that standpoint. If you haven't attended one of our VantagePoint lives before, my name is Daniel. I'm with VantagePoint AI. We're going to do some analysis on some of the most active movers that we've heard about, been reading about, and been seeing. VantagePoint has been forecasting extremely accurately for these stocks and these assets. So we're going to walk through some of that information today. Looking forward to that conversation. Always a good conversation when it comes down to it. But before we get going, I just want to make sure we're good. Hey, Mojo, glad you're here. Super Todd. JS, hello, hello. It looks like everything is working as designed. Okay, good. That's good news. I don't know what happened, but I went to pop in and start streaming live and had some technical difficulties. So we'll call it a user error, I guess. Well, on today's agenda, we're going to talk about things like the artificial intelligence battle, if you will, with AMD, Nvidia, and Intel. And not from a company standpoint, but from a trading standpoint. We want to take a look at those assets and understand what we're seeing overall in the markets and what we can expect in days to come from what their, media is pitting as the AI battle. Some giants fighting it out for artificial intelligence. Then we'll take a look at some of the other conversations related to GameStop, Tesla, NEO, American Airlines. There's a lot of stocks out there that have a lot of volume. I'm talking about over 50 million shares traded yesterday, like Marathon. We'll look at Apple. Some of the most active stocks out there we'll do some analysis on as a group and just walk through the details. I'll apply whatever indicators I use on a daily basis to provide some insight that I see. This is education. This is not advice. I'm not here to provide you trading advice. Trading is hard. You got to make sure you're managing your risk. It is an odds play. You got to stack the odds in your favor because, for you to win, somebody else has to lose. So we're going to look in the software today of how we can help you do that. Now, the software that I use is called VantagePoint. It does work for futures, yes. Matter of fact, we can take a look at futures market if you want to. I see your question in there, Super Todd. I don't know what market you want to look at in futures, but we can check out gold. We can check out silver. There's several different markets. There's over 74 individual markets. So I'm glad you're in the room. Hey, Lane, glad to see you, my friend. Lane, our VantagePoint president, pop it in to say hello in the chat. I appreciate that. Nice to see you in the chat. Let's take a look. Let me bring up the screen. The first thing that I want to do, I'm going to just pop into the VantagePoint software. Here you go. If you look right above me, you can see we've got some really powerful charts. We will look at the ES and the NQ, Super Todd, for sure. Those indices are what I'm going to review right now. As a matter of fact, I want to start there. Okay, I want to start with the indices, and the reason I want to start there is because understanding what the overall markets are expected to do, whether you're trading futures or you're trading stocks, I've always said is gives you an extra ability to understand what the current is doing, what the market is doing overall. So I like to do that to really start any analysis, make any decisions around the overall market. So if you look at the chart right now on the screen, I've got the Dow on the screen, and I can zoom in on this and we can just look at the most recent forecast here on the right-hand side. Now, from a technical analysis standpoint, there's several things that I'm looking at on this chart. Some of the things, I have access to in the VantagePoint software, which is the software that I use to do my analysis. Some of the things you can look at on any chart. It's about combining the right tool set for me. And in this case, let me show you an example. I'm going to take off this and just have, right now, price action on the screen. And what I see is that there's an overall resistance level up here. I can see that prices came up, met a certain level, failed off of that level at different points, and then prices came down, same situation. Created a support point down here. Prices couldn't get below that at 38,102 on the Dow as an overall market. So I can see there are some support and resistance points on this chart. Now there is an old support point back here where price created a basis around that 38,000 mark. So for price to get down to 38,000, it's going to take some real momentum. So that's where I can draw some conclusions on overall price to see that price could not get down to 38,000 recently, and it set a slightly higher support point. Well, for you as a trader, that's something you've got to consider. Prices couldn't get much lower than where they had been in previous months and then stalled. Well, there's some bullishness in that price. Doesn't mean the trend is expected to move higher. It doesn't mean that there's going to be a rally or anything like that. It just means I've got to understand where old price points could have an impact on current price. And then I start to layer in my VantagePoint indicators. And for those of you that don't know, VantagePoint utilizes artificial intelligence through a patented process to generate predictions. I use it day in and day out to do my analysis. And one of the indicators is the first indicator I always use is this blue line. This is a predicted moving average. And the predicted moving average, you can see, is pointed down. It's below the simple moving average, which is this gray line. And why that is significant is simply because if that blue line is below that gray line, or that shaded area is red, and you can see that shaded area is certainly red, that's indicating overall bearishness in the trend, okay? Overall bearishness in the trend. And when I say bearishness in the trend, what I mean is if I'm looking to participate in the stock market from a Dow standpoint, I have permission to be more bearish than bullish. Doesn't mean things are going to go down. It means the overall trend is expected to be more bearish than anything. Well, as a trader, what does that mean when I say more bearish than anything? Well, I could expect a little bit of weakness overall from a trend standpoint for the Dow. Now, I also have the ability to say, take a look at the predict high and predict low for today. At 6:30 at night, I had this information. This is when VantagePoint updates. And what we're looking at today is what we would expect for the Dow from an overall trade day standpoint, the range, the high to the low for the Dow. For those of you that don't have access to this information day in and day out, this, again, it updates at 6:30 at night and gives us the ability to understand the range. And I can see that VantagePoint, if I click my cursor over here, in the top left corner, I got a predicted high of 38,904, a predicted low of 38,459, right? That matters because that means I can expect prices to play within that range. The current Dow price, 38,512, right? 38,512 is currently where the Dow is, so it's right within that range. You can see that it's, it might be off a little bit here and there. The last minute or two, it's 38,512, so it's right here. That's where it is right now, which shows that there is certainly some bearishness in the overall trend. Well, now I know from a trend standpoint, I've got more bearishness in the Dow. I can do this same exact analysis, for instance, on the ES, on the S&P 500, right? Oh yeah, Michael, thank you. I appreciate that. Talking about the posts on the family values and the charitable donations, VantagePoint and Mendelssohn's, really give you, our VantagePoint family members, you guys that have the software, give us the opportunity to not only help you, but help the community around us. So I just saw that message from Michael and Len, and I wanted to say thank you for being part of the VantagePoint family, because you're the ones that give us the opportunity to do that. So, Super Todd, this is end of day data. It's end of day data. So what we're able to do with this now on the ES is I can see, well, here's the ES, and what we're seeing is that the blue line is below that gray line. The shaded area is red, which indicates some bearishness. But now that blue line over the last couple of days has started pointing up. Now, I'm never going to try to out-predict the predictor, if you will. I'm never going to say that means there's bullishness expected. There's still some bearishness expected in that trend because the shaded area is red. But I think it's easy to see that there's some consolidation going on. We got a predicted high today up here, a predicted low up here. So that means we can expect a little bit more overall from a price standpoint, a little bit more bullishness on price today on the S&P 500. It doesn't mean an up day. It just means compared to yesterday, we could see slightly higher prices, right? Now, right now it's at 52.63, right? When we say 52.63, that means that we've got a little bit of an opportunity. VantagePoint's predicted low is 52.65, so it's sitting down here at the bottom saying, you know what? If prices are going to rise today, they could go all the way up to that 53 mark, the predicted high of 53.28. Okay, so this is the consolidation I was talking about. When we see that red saying bearishness, but that line is pointing up, we can basically draw a channel across current price and see that that is the consolidation expectation. Matter of fact, I had a conversation this morning about the consolidation I was expecting on the S&P and the consolidation I was expecting on the NASDAQ. Because if we look at the NASDAQ, we see the same thing. Bearishness overall, but that blue line is pointing sideways. And when I see that blue line pointing sideways or up, and that shaded area is red, I know I've got some consolidation happening. Now, I don't just stop there. We're looking at the NASDAQ right now. I switched charts on you really quickly. We'll go back to the ES in a second. But I also see that there's some short-term strength building. And this bearish momentum that's forecasted with VantagePoint, the one-day momentum indicator has kind of rounded out. It's shifted. It's not bullish momentum, but that bearish momentum has hit a low point, or you could even call it support. See, momentum has been slowly peeling off this and forecasted to peel off this before things started to fall. We can see some hints going on with momentum that there's some consolidation going. So the S&P and the NASDAQ are both forecasted to start, to be consolidated sideways today, right? There's not some big rally that's expected to happen. There isn't a rout that's expected to happen. We can expect under a 0.5 percentage point or less of movement on the NASDAQ, on the S&P. The Dow has a little bit more bearishness, but still, here's back to the Dow again, guys. Don't forget, that line is pointed sideways. Momentum has kind of found a bottom here. So it's got more bearishness than the other markets, but all in all, sideways. So going into the market today, what VantagePoint was saying about the overall trend is that there's consolidation on the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P. That consolidation is very, very clearly going to make this a stock trading market, meaning do the technical analysis on the individual stocks. Because if the overall market is going sideways and you're getting a very strong bullishness from an individual stock forecast or analysis, and I realize not everybody here has VantagePoint. By the way, if you don't have VantagePoint, you can always go to VantagePointForecast.com and get your questions answered. If you've got some individual questions like Super Todd, you want to dig into a little bit more one-on-one, we're happy to do that. This is not similar to Think or Swim, Anicia. It's Asia, sorry about that. It is it's technical analysis like Thinkorswim has, but this is forecasted. This is patented technology that has forecasted information. And some of you may be saying, well, what do you mean forecasted? Well, the formula for creating these indicators has predictive days data in the formula. And we can dig into that another time if you want to. I want to do some more of the analysis I was talking about today. But in general, it can forecast 1 to 3 days in the future with accuracy up to 86%, 87.4% technically. We've got some very high accuracy ratings that have been proven and tested. This software has been available since 1991. So this isn't new. We've been utilizing technology for over 3 decades. That artificial intelligence technology that people are now talking about, have been talking about extensively for the last few years. We've been applying to our analysis since 91. So glad you're here so you can learn more about it. Here, let's dive into AMD. I moved over to the AMD chart, and the reason I moved over to the AMD chart is to do a couple of things. Considering the fact that what we're seeing is overall consolidation from the indices, when I say this is a individual stock analysis market, what that means is when I'm getting consolidation from the indices, I can look down right over here on the right-hand side of my chart and do some analysis on what I'm seeing, and that will likely play out in that price today. So at 6:30 last night, when I looked at AMD, Nvidia, and intel to understand the three giants in artificial intelligence. If you haven't read those stories, they seem like they're popping up all over the place for me. I wanted to see, well, what does that mean for the movements of the share price? AMD, that's what we're looking at right here. VantagePoint said trend is expected to be weaker. VantagePoint had a predicted low that is lower and a predicted high that is lower. So I like to formulate something called the AI sentiment. That is something that we created here at VantagePoint, where if you can get a sentiment of what the artificial intelligence is saying about an individual asset, and that sentiment is more bearish, bullish, or consolidated, depending on which way it's going, that's the direction that I'm expecting that trend to go. Well, in this case, we got bearishness on the trend from a medium-term standpoint. We got bearishness on the predicted high and low. The predicted neural index, by the way, this is a strength indicator. It's looking at the current day's price, which is a prediction in the previous days compared to the couple of days before that. I'm not going to get into all the math behind it, but what this is saying is that there is bearishness expected in the price. If you want me to get into the math behind it, or an expert here at VantagePoint, you can write us or go to VantagePointForecast.com, and happy to get into it. We're very transparent. It's patented technology. So, but what this is saying is I've got bearishness from a strength standpoint. So my trend is saying bearish. My predicted high and predicted low for the price today, both independently calculated indicators, are saying bearish. Strength is bearish, and look at my momentum. My momentum on AMD has been bearish since early last week. Monday, is that? Tuesday last week, we've had momentum peeling off of AMD. So when I read a story about AMD and its ability to rival Nvidia related to artificial intelligence chips, I think, all right, that's a good story, but what does that mean for price? Nothing. If it's rivaling Nvidia, you would expect prices to rise. But what VantagePoint is saying is you'd expect AMD to drop today, right? And not by a little. You know, this is a substantial drop. You know, VantagePoint is saying that you could see Nvidia around 160, even lower than that. You know, potentially 158. Now, I don't know if it's going to get that low throughout the day. It's still early, but I do know that with an accuracy that is, heck, call it 80% accurate, right? That puts you in a good position to protect your capital. Because if you go by the news stories that I was reading, I don't know about you, but if you go by those news stories, then you tend to think, okay, time to grab a quick trend to the upside. Maybe I can get a good day trade, a bullish day trade, or maybe I can jump in on this right now and buy some calls. If you did that without the benefit of artificial intelligence, you're immediately losing right away, right? And that's where it becomes more risky to use your gut or to use indicators that aren't predictive, that don't have this global view, okay? Michael says, as a new user, this platform is outstanding. It really does give me an edge. Thank you. Hey, Michael, I appreciate that. Thank you for putting that comment in the chat. And thank you for being part of the VantagePoint family, my friend. What time frame is it most accurate? It's all end of day data, Super Todd. I'm just going through the questions and make sure I didn't miss anything. Sorry about that. Trying to learn 0 DTE on SPX. All right, you're looking for the day trade stuff. All right, so AMD bearish expectation. Now, I'm also going to go a step further, and I'm going to put on those support and resistance levels. Now, I was showing you them before just by eyeballing them, but in the VantagePoint software, I'm going to use every advantage I have, and I can see that there is support and resistance building a channel around AMD's price, which means I could see a drop down to that 158, but then I'm going to need some very strong momentum to push past that, which is why I say not expecting a rout at this point, but definitely some bearishness on the day. And today would have been very productive for anybody buying puts, selling calls. As a matter of fact, this channel, this channel creates using the support and resistance, gives me a great place to write some covered calls. Selling some calls at 175, just outside of that, or maybe you like to spread trade options. by using these predictive indicators in conjunction with these verified support and resistance levels, you start to get a much clearer picture around what you can do with AMD and not let that news or those news stories, that speculation based on fundamentals or what people are talking about, have a negative impact on your capital. The artificial intelligence is very clear. Well, now let's go look at Intel. I think today's story was Intel that I read the most about Intel. What did the story say? I'm trying to remember the headline. I think they're the ones that said rival Nvidia or something like that. But still, VantagePoint forecasted Intel to be moving lower back on 5/23. Today's June 4th. Since then, prices have certainly gone lower. And today, looking at the most recent forecast, just analyzing the right-hand side of the chart. Oh, didn't need to get that close. Here we go. Look, the blue line is below and pointed down, saying trend is still expected to be bearish. The predicted high and predicted low are bearish as well. I've got little red shaded areas. By the way, for those of you that haven't seen this before, this is this looks like a gray candle. This is what VantagePoint's predicting for the next trade day. It came out, I'm going to write it again just in case anybody missed it earlier, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time last night. It creates guideposts, an upper and lower control limit. It's not predicting an up day or a down day. It's predicting the day's range, right, with a high degree of accuracy. And if the top part of that range is shaded red, that means it's lower than the previous day's high. If the bottom part of that range is shaded red, that means it's lower than the previous day's low. That's what that means. So when you're using that information, you've got to be able to understand how that can influence your trade decision. And for me, again, from an educational standpoint, if I'm expecting a lower high and a lower low and the trend is expected to be lower, I'm getting more of an bearish AI sentiment. Now, when I look at this and I see that there is short-term weakness in overall price, I've got four indicators right now, right here, all saying bearish at the same time. And these four indicators are predicting one-day strength, two-day trend, and one-day price in the future. Okay? That gives me a lot of bearishness. Then I go down lower and I say, look, what is momentum saying? My one-day momentum prediction, my two-day and my three-day momentum prediction are all creating lower highs. Lower highs says that there is bearishness predicted over the next couple days from a momentum standpoint. Well, what that means is I could see prices on Intel fall. So again, that news story that broke a little while ago, a few hours ago, about Intel being rival to artificial intelligence chips to Nvidia did nothing for its share price. And at 6:30 last night, the technology that I use in VantagePoint said prices are expected to be lower, and prices are lower. Now, stop and think about that for a second. Saro says he wants to get closer so he can see better. I don't know what you're looking for, but the story doesn't change the closer you get, right? Bearish, 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 bearish. And prices are lower. Intel is at $30.13. VantagePoint had the predicted low potentially going lower than that. Where's $30.13? There it is. So right now, that is where Intel is. This is where Intel closed yesterday. It is down on the day, and some bearishness certainly happened. What was the high of Intel today? I wonder if I can get the high. 30.75. VantagePoint predicted a high of 30.65, got within a dime, 10 cents. And this was predicted last night. That is powerful information. Now, let's go take a look at Nvidia. VantagePoint has forecasted Nvidia up since April 26th in this latest trend. And this is right out of the box. For those of you that use the VantagePoint or have the VantagePoint software already, first time you looked at Nvidia on this chart, this is what you'd be seeing. It's a 3-month chart, done nothing to it, it's default view. Now, do I add indicators that are extra? Absolutely. I like to add things like those support and resistance levels. I like to look at what momentum is expected to do. I have a host of indicators, over 100 indicators that I like to look through very, very quickly, predicted with the artificial intelligence, so that I can walk away with an AI sentiment. Basically, what is the view that artificial intelligence has of this stock? Let's look. 6:30 last night, the blue line is above. That's saying trend expected higher over the next couple of days. Predicted high is higher than the previous day. Predicted low is higher than the previous day. Both of those giving me bullishness. I do have a resistance point up here. So I'm going to need some momentum to break that resistance point if I'm expecting prices to get above that. Can prices still rise and not hit that resistance point? Absolutely. Look, I'm zooming in for you. Prices can rise from yesterday's close and still not hit that resistance point, right? Resistance, we know, for those of you that don't know how resistance works, you will often see price rise through an old price point, stop, and then come back. You will often see that, right? That is a failure off of a resistance point. I'm not saying that Nvidia is going to do that. I'm saying that you often see that with price. The only thing that can break through, I shouldn't say the only thing, there are two things when combined together that can push price through resistance. And those two things are volume and momentum. Sure, can a one-time fundamental thing spike it through? Absolutely. I'm talking about day in and day out price movements, not the random earnings that happen 4 times a year, right? Not the news stories that happen once in a while. That doesn't move the market day in and day out. What moves the market day in and day out is the relationships that that stock has and what's driving it from around the world. Look, let me show you. Just a quick aside. Look, if I go into the market details and I look at the intermarkets, this is what the artificial intelligence and VantagePoint has found influences the price of Nvidia. Look, you can see it right there on the screen. There's over 30 markets on this list. eBay, that's a stock. United Therapeutics, L'Oreal. There's so many stocks in here that you would not have analyzed to figure out what is going on with the share price of Nvidia. Now you would expect the Dow, the yen, S&P 500, oats, probably not. But see, the AI can do analysis that is virtually humanly impossible. I can't analyze over 10,000 markets around the world. I can't look at the high, low, close, volume, open interest, and all those data points and figure out what's going to happen with NVIDIA. I can't do it. That's why we use artificial intelligence, and that process is called intermarket analysis, and that's patented. Why I wanted to show you that is because what that means is when these predictive indicators that are generated from that analysis are saying there is bullishness expected in NVIDIA, I can expect bullishness with a high degree of accuracy. Because I have a resistance point up here, I then want to layer on my momentum indicators. And these are predicted momentum indicators I use in the VantagePoint software. Predicted MACD, RSI, stochastic, percent R are 4 go-tos. I also then layer on fractal RSI, ATR, and volume, and we're going to do that in a second. But these are predicted. This isn't your standard MACD that you can find for free everywhere. This has been enhanced with artificial intelligence. RSI, stochastic, and percent R all enhanced with artificial intelligence, which means they can predict momentum one day in the future. What they're saying, MACD, line's pointed up, saying bullish momentum. RSI, line is pointed up, saying that there's bullish momentum. Stochastic, that line is on top of each other, saying consolidating. And percent R, we've got higher low, that line is pointed up, saying there is bullish momentum. Okay. So what does that mean for NVIDIA? That means that there could be higher prices today, but all my momentum indicators are not in agreement, which means that that resistance point up here that we were talking about a second ago, call it 1157, we can expect when prices get above that to potentially pull it back down, especially if that is a 52-week high. Let's look. That is a 52-week high. As a matter of fact, look at how strong this resistance point is. 1, 2, 3, 4, and potentially today, 5 days could not get past that price point. In order for price of Nvidia to get past and stay past that price point that has been held down for 5 days, it needs some major volume and momentum. Bullish volume and momentum. Well, we look at volume. We did get bullish volume over bearish volume, but not major, right? We can see that 43 million shares traded yesterday. The day before that, which was Friday, 61 million shares traded, mostly bearish. So when we look at that, we can see that volume has changed to be more bullish than bearish, but it's not increasing. I can then layer ATR on, and this is the analysis that I like to do, and I might be getting a little bit too in depth for some of you. That's okay. We'll keep it basic as we can, and these indicators, if you're a VantagePoint user, you may not have all of them. These are extra indicators that I like to look at, but if I look at ATR, I can see that ATR has stagnated sideways, right? That means the candle ranges I'm seeing right now are pretty consistent over the last several days. That does not indicate enough bullishness in the candle range, because ATR can tell you a lot about volatility, which can tell you about the trend direction. I don't have enough to push past and stay past that 52-week high, right? Roberto, remember what I said. Remember what I said, my friend. Right now, let's see. Where is Nvidia? Right now, Nvidia is at 1143. Where is that resistance point? 1158, Roberto. So that's what I was talking about, is where you can see prices get up to that resistance point. The high is 1161, and then it fell right back down. It went and fell right back down like I started this conversation with, and now it's at 1143, right? Prices are down here. We don't have enough volume and momentum to push past that resistance and stay up there. For those of you that haven't ever done support and resistance analysis before, or don't use that day to day, when you combine that with predictive indicators and you understand overall price movements of the markets, it can provide you some really, really great information. And that's why we've got these levels in the VantagePoint software, so that we as a group can use them on top of our predictive information. So although prices are, popped above it, they could not stay above it. And I'm saying because the ATR and volume and momentum are not all there just yet. Does that mean tomorrow prices couldn't pop above and stay above? No. At 6:30 tonight, this forecast will update. I'll be able to analyze all these predictive indicators again for tomorrow's trade day and be able to make some really strong assessments. We overall have bullishness on Nvidia, with the resistance kind of tempering that bullishness. We have bearishness on AMD and bearishness on Intel expected today. We're seeing all of that happen. So those news stories did not sway VantagePoint one bit, and prices are going the way that VantagePoint indicated they would likely go. All right. GameStop. Let's talk about GameStop for a second. I mean, holy cow, has there been some volatility in GameStop even up to this moment today? I got to show you something. And the only reason I'm showing you this, and this is a lot of market manipulation, so let's be clear on what this is. But why I'm showing it to you is because VantagePoint indicated bullishness on GameStop right here. Everything was lined up for bullishness, clear as day, which means if you had this software and you were trading that stock and you were comfortable with it, you could have ran this thing up dramatically. I'm just going to go right in the middle of that candle and see that that's a grand slam. Not always going to happen. If you didn't play stops, or you didn't exit it out after a 300-point increase, then you could say, you know what, I got stopped out here. I don't care if you went all the way to after the crossover. That's still almost 100% increase in price on GameStop using the artificial intelligence forecast, even in extreme market manipulations, right? Now, I'm not saying we were predicting, Roaring Kitty to come out of the woodwork. For those of you that understand what happened with GameStop and why it ran up like that, we didn't say that. Artificial intelligence in the software didn't predict that. It predicted prices were expected to increase. And that puts the users in a catbird seat. Well, let's zoom in on the recent information. Just the other day, there was a forecast to the upside for GameStop. Right? You can see that forecast. If I go to the one-day forecast, for those of you who like to day trade, we had a really strong forecast right there on 528 indicating bullishness on GameStop. That alone produced a dramatic increase in just a couple of days. Even if we go to where GameStop is right now at 26 and change or whatever case is, that's about an 18-20% move. VantagePoint is indicating overall bullishness on GameStop regardless of what's going on from the chatter standpoint. But you can see there is bullishness on GameStop in here. We could layer in the indicators, we can leave them simple, but overall the trend is still expected to move higher, and that's what we're seeing. Tesla. Oof. Talk about a channel. I got to show you guys this. Look, I'm going to put on support and resistance in Tesla. And by the way, if you've got some questions as we go through this, jump into the chat. You know, the chat is there, so I've got my eye on it. I'm keeping my eye on it. This way, if there's anything that comes up that we can dig into, I'm happy to dig into it. But this is all information that we can use day to day. Sorrow, for you, it's not forecasted. I assume you're not a VantagePoint family member and you don't have this software in and day out. For everybody that has this software and they've invested in the software already, all of this information comes out at 6:30 at night the night before. So what we're talking about here has been available for our users to use for, I mean, this information can forecast up to 3 days out. So what we're looking at was indicating some of this stuff last week. So that's the difference in having the software at your disposal. What we're seeing here is that VantagePoint's been forecasting consolidation for the last, call it 2 weeks on Tesla Motors. And the reason I say that is, look, this shaded area is green, but the line is pointed down. That's a disagreement in the trend saying consolidation. Then when the line goes below, it just stays sideways. Again, more consolidation. Understanding, very different than bullishness like you see here, where that line is pointed up and the shaded area is green and you can capitalize on that big trend. So what we're seeing is consolidation expected from Tesla. Both the trend predictor, sideways, the predicted high and predicted low, slightly lower, short-term strength, slightly up. You see you're getting bullishness and bearishness at the same time from the predictive indicators. And that shows you that these predictive indicators are independently calculating, and if they don't agree, then guess what? There's consolidation expected. Right? It's kind of like me and my family. I've got a couple of kids, and I'm like, hey, what do you guys want for dinner? And one says, you know, they want me to make chicken, and the other wants me to make steak. We gotta go talk to mom about the tiebreaker, because otherwise we're not having dinner because they don't agree. Same idea here, right? Same idea here. Overall, we got consolidation. Roberto is saying, showing me bearish momentum. I don't know if you've got bearish momentum here, seeing as the momentum indicators are in the same spot they were. We've got a little bit of bearish momentum on the medium term. We got a little bit of bullish on the short term. So again, that disagreement says consolidation. And that's where not over-analyzing the indicators is key. If we're getting consolidation from the trend, we're getting bearishness from price, but bullishness from strength. We're getting consolidation from the VantagePoint predicted momentum indicator simply because the 3-day momentum is sideways, the 1-day momentum is bullish, and the 2-day momentum is bearish. There is enough confusion or disagreement of the predictive indicators that the AI sentiment is saying, I don't know if it's steak or chicken. Consolidation is expected, right? And I can layer on all of the indicators that I want to layer on to strengthen that hypothesis, right? It's up to me to accept or reject the null hypothesis. For you analysts out there, basically what I'm saying is I'm coming up with a conclusion to make a trade decision around Tesla, and I'm using these indicators to help me make that conclusion. MACD, dead sideways for weeks. Look, predicted RSI, up, down, sideways. I mean, it's just hovering around that center line. Stochastic, slightly bearish. We can see stochastic poking out just below. But percent R, tagging those bottoms, channeling for weeks. Consolidation expected. You want to make some money create some income, in my opinion, again, from an educational standpoint. In Tesla, it is about iron condors, right? And the reason I say that is because when you look at this, support and resistance is giving you some really great places to sell your options using support and resistance, knowing that the trend and the momentum is sideways. You got a couple of points here, like for instance, 187. And you got another point here, which is a couple of resistance points levels later, 168. 187 and 168 are two price points where selling some options becomes very, very attractive to create some income. And that's all generated by the artificial intelligence saying, hey, there's consolidation in this market. All in all, there's support and resistance holding prices where they are. There's not enough momentum. There's probably not enough volume to push it one way or the other. Let's look. If we're getting increasing or decreasing bullish volume, then that could tell me something, but we are not. Basically, volume is stagnant. Some days it's up, some days it's down, but we don't have any real big changes in volume. Every day is, 50 to 70 million in trading. So consolidation in Tesla and the strategy that calls for is a delta neutral strategy. Or if you don't trade options, go find something else to trade, right? Another one that was heavily traded and talked about is NIO. Now we're coming into earnings for NIO here in a couple days. So if you don't trade through earnings, that's something that you've got to understand so that you don't make a mistake around thinking that trends are expected to take off and then earnings sneaks up on you. There's a very strong earnings play that started a few weeks ago, playing that volatility rush because volatility has increased dramatically going into earnings. Matter of fact, we can see some of that just in ATR. Look, if I put VantagePoint's predicted ATR on the screen, you can see that from a volatility standpoint, an ATR, the average true range, we're getting a lot of peaks and valleys in that range. This is pretty stagnant. This volatility shows there's a lot of volatility going into this earnings call on June 6th. Now, VantagePoint is indicating some bullishness overall from a trend, but again, earnings is coming up, which means I've got to be very cautious about that bullishness from a trend standpoint and from a strength standpoint. VantagePoint predicted a low on NIO today of 521. So you would have known that NIO was expected to go down to 521 today, and nothing around that 521 mark is a surprise. I don't know where NIO is, but let me look. 524. So NIO is right there, right where my cursor is, right where that crosshair is right now. And VantagePoint predicted it could be down to 521 today. Now, that doesn't mean that the overall trend is expected to reverse, right? There's always down days and an uptrend. All in all, VantagePoint is having more bullishness on NIO than anything. And if we layer through our momentum indicators, we're just going to do the four that I've been talking about, and I put on support and resistance, right? I can walk away with a more confident conclusion thanks to the AI sentiment. Here we go. Let's look. Some bullishness here with some consolidation, a little bit of bullishness with a little flat line here, so some consolidation working itself in. TSI completely consolidated. We talked about ATR, a little bit of bullishness here on %R, so more bullishness than not, but not enough to get through that resistance point for sure. And with earnings coming up, it's a wait and see environment for me, right? American Airlines, look at this tumble. Man, American Airlines had a forecast. If you were using VantagePoint on this day, look, we can go back to 521. Saro, this is for you. You probably weren't using this information. I don't know if you have the software. You can let me know in the chat box if you already have VantagePoint or not. But look, if you were using this, let's say you had this software and you downloaded that data on that day, boom, and you see that cross over to the downside. Right there, that's where VantagePoint is saying American Airlines is expected to fall. There's weakness expected in that trend, and momentum is peeling off dramatically, and there's forecasted bearish momentum. Let's say you had that information because you had the VantagePoint software and you see that happen. Well, you buy some puts on that. Let's say you get the 14 strike. Maybe you get the 1450 strike. Either one, somewhere within that prediction. And you can then say, all right, next day I download my data, see what happens. We've got some consolidation, bearish. that option now with that 14 strike, an in the money or at the money option, is starting to produce nicely for you. Next day, look at this. And then bam, because VantagePoint forecasted that information the day out, you can see back here, this forecast, buying a put, 5 puts, 10 puts, 20 puts, whatever you normally trade, that's up to you, had you in the catbird seat for this dramatic fall. The underlying asset from that forecast to where price is on this day, the underlying asset, not the option, moved down 18%. What's that, a 50, 60, 70% win in just a few days on the option? That's how options traders use VantagePoint, and they love it. I can tell you that. We go a little bit further. We got some more bearishness, and then we go right up to the data that we had last night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. We can see that we created a bottom right here, and that if you hadn't already hit your options target for that trade, you can see that there is certainly more bearishness expected. If you bought multiple options on America Airlines, this is the signal, the information where VantagePoint says, hey, look what's going on from momentum. Look what's going on from price. There is enough bullishness on this day without the trend. Forget the trend for a second. Momentum is starting to peel off of this from a forecasted standpoint, and strength is starting to build into the bullish side. See ya. Bye. That's enough. Yesterday was enough information because you got to twist my arm to find a good entry, but you just got to whisper about taking an exit, right? Slow to enter, fast to exit, and VantagePoint sets you up for just a substantial move. I mean, I can't get over it, and this is one that has had a lot of conversation. It's one of the most active movers here lately, and you can see exactly what VantagePoint forecasted. Let's see. Last but certainly not least, from the ones I was talking about, if you rode the write-up in YouTube, I said I was going to do all of these stocks. Here's the last one, Marathon Digital Holdings. A lot of people are quite bullish about Marathon Digital Holdings. There could be some bullishness in Mara today. It could push prices up to that $20 mark. You can see that. You can see momentum is starting to find a bottom. Not time yet, but you can see based on what we're seeing in the VantagePoint software that there is still some bearishness. The only thing that's pushing it up is there is support right here that it's trying to beat. If it fails off of this lower support point like it did, and it failed off of this one because we don't have our 2 confirming closes below that one, prices could certainly push up higher, and I expect prices in this case, look, guys, look, gals, look, 22.25. 22.25 is where prices could rise to if we get some momentum building into this. Now, we have momentum kind of consolidating. But for those of you that are saying, okay, this thing is going to move, VantagePoint is saying, not yet. There's a lot of consolidation happening. And when the software indicates bullishness has moved itself in, well, then that's where go time comes in. So this is one of those watch list ones. And the reason I say that, take a look. That's bearish momentum. That's a flat momentum. That is a bearish momentum. And that is a flat momentum. So we don't have enough bullish momentum or enough bearish momentum. We don't have enough bullish momentum to push prices all the way up to 22.25 yet. We certainly don't have enough bearish to break below that 18.90 at this point. So we can expect prices to hang out right here, right there, based on what the VantagePoint software is saying. All right. Roberto put BA in the chat box. If you're thinking about a stock, you guys have been quiet today, by the way. I've been a little quiet today in the chat. Maybe you're just taking it all in. But if you're thinking about a stock you want me to do some analysis on, I've already got one in BA. I'll take 2 more. Be quick draw to the chat box. Put in a ticker, and I'll take a look at it. Right now, I'm going to look at Apple, so don't put in Apple. I wanted to show you guys Apple because Apple has some really great things going on with it from a trend standpoint. Here's one of the things I want to show you from an Apple trend standpoint. The question I always ask is, do we have a 52-week high on a stock? Yes or no? If we have a 52-week high, then that's something to consider. But if we've got this big uptrend and we are not near the 52-week high, then that's something that I believe could be good for the stock. And in this case, I have plenty of room from yesterday's close to the 52-week high at 199.62, right? All right, I got CRMJS and SAR, I got MSTR. I think I've got everything I need. I'll hit those next. All right, here is Apple. When we look at Apple, we've got bullishness expected. We've got a substantial, just a really nice trend going on from an Apple standpoint. This trend in Apple, you can see if you look at the chart on the screen right now, was forecasted way back here, and that trend is still expected to move higher. So when I look at that Apple trend, it's already up almost 15% on the underlying asset. As an options trader, that is an incredible move if you play through options. If you played through your options through earnings, you capitalize on a substantial move. But even since then, it's a substantial move. And VantagePoint is still is forecasting bullishness. Let's walk through that really quickly. I'm going to get rid of the 52-week high here. Clean up the screen a little bit. I know I've been going pretty fast. I had a lot of things I wanted to cover. Hopefully I didn't leave anybody behind. But here's the latest forecast on Apple. At 6:30 last night, VantagePoint said bullishness, 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 bullishness. The AI sentiment was indicating bullishness. Now, Apple gapped up today and then tried to pull back a little bit. It's currently at 194.35. All right. 194.35 is currently where Apple is sitting, above yesterday's close, moving higher, and that was forecasted at 6:30 last night. And there's still some bullish trend left in this because everything is looking good from an Apple standpoint, in my opinion, that is. All right. All right, let's look. BA. What did I get? I got BA. I got Salesforce, CRM. I'm going to load these up real quick and then we'll take a look at them. CRM, MSTR, MicroStrategy. All right. There's the three I said I'd have time for. Alex, if I've got time to hit Amazon, I will. But we'll look. I try to keep these sessions to an hour, for no other reason than that's a lot of analysis. Right? All right, here is Boeing, and the Boeing forecast you can see on the short-term crossover, if we put that on, was forecasted to be bullish back here on 5/31. That is a short-term forecast. We have a 1-day, a 2-day, and a 3-day forecast from a trend standpoint. We got bullishness in the trend starting 5/31, right? We got bullishness from the predicted high and predicted low last night. We got bullishness from the predictive differences. If I go to my 2-day trend, my 2-day trend gave me a lot of bullishness last night as well. My 3-day trend did not. My 3-day trend predictor said there is some major consolidation happening. Things could turn bullish in the near future. So Boeing gave us a lot of bullishness. Great bullish opportunity. AI sentiment. Let's put on our support and resistance. Got a channel okay, we got a clear channel, which means if prices can get up to 188.38, we would need some really strong momentum to push past that resistance level. That resistance level, if I mark this on the chart and I say, you know what? I have an old support point here that turns into new resistance. You see it? 186.66. If I zoom out on this chart to a year, and I know I got some stuff on here. Let me just remove this really quickly. I want to show you guys something. How powerful support and resistance can be. Look at, this is the white line I put on the screen. Price stopped here, right? Price broke above that, came back to it. You can see these big candles happen right around price because when there's momentum and volume going into that resistance break, that means something. Look at price came down and bounced off of that point. Came back to it, stalled for a few days and then dropped, right? Went above it, tried to come back to it, couldn't, and then gone. This price point is a valuable price point to understand, which is why I put my line on Boeing. And you were asking who was asking for Boeing. Roberto was asking for Boeing. So that price point at 186.66 is substantial and could slow down price. The high for Boeing today is 187.47. The high for Boeing went up right where VantagePoint said. VantagePoint forecasted a high. Look, folks. This is what VantagePoint forecasted. Here is the number, 187.38. Price went up to that, 187.42, within a nickel. You had this yesterday's information for today. That's like getting, you know, it's kind of a funny way to think about it. But you got to ask yourself: would you rather have today's newspaper today, or would you rather have gotten today's newspaper yesterday? And that's what VantagePoint does for me from an analysis standpoint. But regardless, Boeing has some bullishness still in it. It's going to need some positive momentum to break past that resistance point. We can see that momentum. Let's put on our momentum indicators that are predicted here. Boom, boom, predicted MACD, predicted RSI, predicted stochastics, pardon me, and predicted percent R. Let's do some analysis on those, right? MACD just crossing to the upside, so we're getting some bullishness, but not all the bullishness we need because we got a high there on MACD. So from an oscillator standpoint, there is slight bullishness building in there. Got some really good bullishness on RSI. Nice strong stochastic. Nice strong percent R. So things are really shaping up bullish for Boeing. Excuse me. Let me get some water. Covered a lot of information, doing a lot of talking today. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of today's session. Let's keep on rolling through it. Here's CRM. VantagePoint forecasted bearishness on CRM going into earnings. If you're willing to play through earnings, these forecasts can be really valuable around earnings, which you've already seen. There was a huge drop after earnings. Now, VantagePoint did forecast bearishness, which shows you how powerful this really is, because after VantagePoint forecasted it, I mean, to the close on the day after earnings was a 20% drop. Now, for those of you that are like me and have your trust in probabilities and knowing that the odds are, with the accuracy up to 87.4%, that that's going to go the way the AI is saying it, that's a huge win opportunity there, right there on CRM. Right? Here's hypothetical gains, but 500 shares could have produced over $27,000 in profits in 4 days if you play that way when you trade the markets. If you trade that way and that's part of your strategy, great. If it's not, because you don't play around earnings, that's okay. Come back another day when there's an opportunity and earnings aren't involved. Earnings will continue to affect the market for about a 72-hour period. So we know whatever's happening right now through the end of the day today is still related to some of that earnings influence. At 6:30 tonight, we'll get an updated forecast. We'll be able to do some analysis on this. But VantagePoint said you could expect a lower high today than the previous day. That shaded area is red. We're still in the bearish mode, but momentum has done this crazy V reversal, right? That is because of earnings. I do not trust a V reversal that is a result of earnings. No matter what platform you're looking at, you can't forget how price acts and how traders act around earnings. You can't eliminate that from your analysis. The artificial intelligence gave me some really great information. But I also have to consider the fact that earnings are going on, right? So at this point, it's still a wait and see for me. I would expect some consolidation right here on CRM. Once earnings are done, tonight at 6:30, I'll get an update and I'll take a look at that. But JS, you were asking about Salesforce. VantagePoint did have a great forecast to the downside, and right now VantagePoint is saying, all right, that's clearly, there's some bullishness that happened here. So if you did play that from an option standpoint, that would have been an exit yesterday. Right now, it's just wait and see. MicroStrategy has entered a channel. If you don't know about MicroStrategy, there's been some incredible moves with MicroStrategy. If you look back over the last 9 months, you can see how powerful these forecasts have been. Saro, check this out. The MicroStrategy trends with VantagePoint forecasts have produced some substantial gains both to the long and short side. To show you those gains, I'm just kind of outlining what the forecast said and did through all those periods. I mean, these are pretty big gains. Even if I just heck, let's call this a big loser, right? I'm going to call that a big loser and put it down here. You can see what these trends have been able to do using the artificial intelligence. These are all hypothetical gains, but if you add up the winners against the losers using round numbers, we're talking about 100%, 125%, 325%, 340% to the positive and 31% to the loss. I mean, that is a substantial difference. And again, we're talking about potential opportunity here. What it's saying right now, what the artificial intelligence is saying to me right now about MicroStrategy is that it is channeling. Look, we've got resistance. We've got support. We've got a bearish trend prediction with a blue line pointed up saying consolidation. We got a predicted high that's lower, a predicted low is lower, but we got more strength. And then we got momentum bottoming out on the one-day momentum trying to go up, but the three-day momentum saying down. When my predictive indicators don't agree, my AI sentiment is not more from a weighted standpoint, not more weighted bullishly, well then it's consolidation. It could be more weighted bearishly, but when there's disagreement, right, then I've got consolidation that I can expect. You can always make money to the upside, the downside, Andrew, but what I was talking about was a right and wrong prediction, right? So if you look at all of those charts again, like if I do that again for you, Andrew, what I was talking about is this is an accurate prediction to the upside. This is an accurate prediction to the downside. This is an accurate prediction to the upside. This is an inaccurate prediction to the downside. This one would have been a wrong prediction, right? This is accurate to the downside. This is accurate to the upside. When you look at it that way, it's like, holy cow, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 accurate predictions and 1 inaccurate one. That's a pretty darn good ratio. Maybe we call that 80%. I'll leave that up to you. And from a gain standpoint, holy moly, the difference in gains was like 340% to 30% wrong. That's 340% right to 30% wrong in hypothetical gains. I love doing this analysis, and I love the markets because of what those things can produce. But the channel that's happening right now in MicroStrategy is saying, hey, there is some consolidation expected, and that consolidation is being realized. We would need to see, from MicroStrategy standpoint, I would need to see some pretty strong momentum one way or the other in order to break through and break out of this channel. It has entered a channel and there's not enough momentum one way or the other. Look, consolidated, trying to be bullish, bearish, consolidated, trying to be bullish. There's not momentum one way or the other, which means this channel that is 1715 roughly to 1525 roughly is real, and there's consolidation going on, which means you can make money sideways on MicroStrategy if you've got a delta neutral strategy or an option strategy. You know, selling some calls outside of 1750 and selling some puts below 15, call it 1500, 1525, could produce some really strong income. So we've had some dramatic bullishness, some dramatic bearishness, and some consolidation, all a lot of really powerful money-making opportunities. I did do the 3 that I asked for. I'm out of time today. I do like to keep these to an hour. I appreciate the interaction. Thank you for being here today. By the way, if you're part of the VantagePoint family, thank you. And if you're not and you've got some questions, you can always go to VantagePointForecast.com and we can dig in. Happy to answer your questions. Otherwise, thank you for being here, and thank you for letting me give you the view from my vantage point. Everybody have a great day and happy trading.